All right. Welcome, folks. This is FMA Discussion, episode 136. And tonight is going to be more theme-oriented and where that we will not be covering each of these gentlemen's bios, a journey per se. However, if you have an interest in seeing them, you can check out Sifu Dwight Woods, episode 8, 18, and 73. And tonight, frequent customer. And then Mark Stewart, episode 23. And Mahipal actually has agreed to come on next month, so which I'm looking forward to. So how this episode came about for the folks that are watching is that Lance Velez messaged me something in a private message regarding how there's a version of Filipino martial arts being American. I came up with a conversation with Mark and Sifu Dwight, and then Mahipal joined, and hence is kind of why we're here. Collectively, we thought, this would be nice, something, worthy of discussing and sharing with folks in the discussion and, folks that watch this on YouTube. And, but lastly, I want to stress that we're presenting an argument, an opinion based on, the forthcoming content in this. So just sit back and enjoy. And we're going to get started right now. And these gentlemen have chosen to introduce themselves. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. So Sifu Dwight, go ahead.
Woods is W. You're going by first names?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Dwight Woods. I'm a Jeet Kune Do and Kali instructor, certified under Dan Inasano. I've been with him since 1983, and I ran a school here in Miami for close to 30 years, and kind of semi-retired, and I just have a little training group that gets together, and then I have a little stable of private clients.
All right. And next, Guru Mark.
Hello, boy, the girl. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my background in FMA. So I've studied a few different things over the years, but primarily my teacher was the late Guro Ted Lukai. And then late in the past 10 years, I would say, I also started really giving a lot of serious thought to what it was that his father was teaching us. His father, Guro Lucky Lukai, who passed away as well. And he referred to his material as derecho, which just means simplified and finishing the fight as quickly as possible. So between the two, the son, Ted Lukai and Guro Lucky, kind of gives me the direction of my understanding of Filipino martial arts. And but the one thing that I wanted to say before I hand it over to the next guy is that when I look back at their family, the Lukai family, right? And this kind of fits in with the theme of today is that, clearly they're Filipino, Hawaiian Americans, but maybe not necessarily in that order. When I look back at it, they were more like American, Hawaiian, Filipinos. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but that makes a lot of sense to me. So, yeah, that's it.
All right. No, thank you. Guru Mahipal.
I've been doing martial arts for a fairly long time, a varied background, so to speak, having studied while in Asia, Europe, and the United States. I've been lucky to have had the tutelage of some really, really good, really, really awesome teachers, many of them not in the public eye. But as far as my FMA goes, it'll be wrong for me not to acknowledge my teachers and mentors here. So Mano Ron Saturno, Mano JC Caballero, Guru Mark Mikita, Guru James Keating, Guru Ata Mushtaq Ali Al-Ansari, and a few others who shall remain unnamed. But that's kind of me. For the last 5 years, I've been very actively involved in reviving the study of hoplogy, which is the study of armed combat around the world. And along with anthropologists, some very, very senior martial artists have led 5 expeditions around the world, including to Philippines, where that was under the co-leadership with Mangromio Macapagal of Kali Listrisima. So that's it about me.
Wow. Caballero, I didn't know that. Okay, so as you all well know, I'm Dean Franco. I host FMA discussion, and I'll just say I've been around the block, and I'll leave it at that. So, okay. All right, so folks, we're going to jump into it. We have 4 parts. Each each guest here will get a crack at first and all that, and then we'll get subsequent, what they want to continue to add to it from the first person, all that. So each guest again will get their first chance to answer it and all that. But as far as questions coming in, what we decided to do is that if we do get a lot of questions, we're going to have a part 2 to this, and then that part 2 will specifically address all incoming questions. So if you have a question, we'll get to it, but it's just, unfortunately, it's going to have to be part 2. So the first topic we're going to deal with is incorrect terms that we are using that Filipinos don't use or disagree with. And that seems to be originated in the West. And we'll give some examples of that. But the first is Guro Mahipal is going to address this first, and then we'll get subsequent input from Sifu Dwight, and Guro Mark. So Guro Mahipal, what say you?
I say it's just natural, right? So the first thing I would say is, if you look at what Martin Heidegger said, he said language is the house of being. In other words, the language that we use is the homes that we construct and how we show up in the world proper, right? Now, as language moves, as language travels, it's only natural that it changes. For example, if you look at the Indian Empire from the 9th century to the 13th century, it conquered most of Southeast Asia, right? Vaishnav became Visayan. Guru became Guro. With Mangromi, as we were studying and doing this hoplological study of how arts and languages change over time, and what happens, we found that almost 1/6 of the language in Philippines derived its roots from Sanskrit. However,
can I interrupt and say something? This is why I wanted to be on with this guy. Yeah, I told y'all. This is why I wanted to be on with this.
We have to thank Mark for bringing him on. So
please,
Mark should be.
Please continue. I'm not saying anything. I'm just gonna relax.
Yeah, we'll just sit back and.
This is the coolest thing.
Thank you, guys. So 1/6 of the language is still based in Sanskrit. Now, I'm Indian. I can get all up in arms that you guys are pronouncing it wrong, but that would be me insulting the whole Southeast Asian culture. Why so? Because they have a right to adapt, to grow, and take what makes sense to them in a way that makes sense to them, right? So
Here.
I understand the need for correct pronunciation, but let's also understand that the language is the house of being. And if I am forcing my language and my way of being on you, am I not colonizing you mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Am I not making you a prisoner? And that's not what the arts are about. The arts are about freedom, right? Yeah. So if you are talking about that, yes, languages will adapt, languages will change. Let's embrace that, right? It's again, like, gardening is a good example. Like mangoes, I love mangoes. Being Indian, it's hard not to like mangoes. But try growing a mango tree in the US. It's hard shit, and it doesn't come out exactly the same way.
Right.
It adapts, it changes ever so often. That doesn't make it an inferior mango, right? Doesn't make it a bad mango. It's just a mango and it changes. So, incorrect pronunciation. When Mark and I talk, I yawn when somebody says that. Stop fucking boring me. Show me you can move. You can't move.
Right.
Everything that you say is full of shit. It's mental masturbation. Have fun with it. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
You can have that back and forth in your own head. Go for it. I rather test it out. Now, even the movements are going to change, right? Why? What's the average height and weight of a Southeast Asian compared to, say, somebody in Africa, to, say, somebody in North America? What's that diet? What's the primary language? If the language changes, the house where you live and operate changes. If my build, my genetics are different, that's going to change, right? So it's only natural, and this should be celebrated. This should not be looked down upon, because if you look at nature also, adaptation and varieties growing is what allows that primary seed or that gene pool to survive. And if you don't do that, you'll be eradicated. Purity leads to eradication. That's it.
Thank you. And so, as mentioned, we'll get input for others. So, Sifu Dwight, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I'm just gonna try to borrow some of his coolness, because I'm not Indian, but I was born in an Indian village in Trinidad where mangoes are grown. And I live in Miami where it's actually pretty easy to grow mangoes as well. Yeah. So I just want to come off as erudite as Mahipal does. But you notice a lot of what he said there, adaptation and the making use of what makes sense to you. I hate to bring this up because it's an exhausted treatise, especially on the internet. The whole absorb what is useful thing, and its place in the Jeet Kune Do lexicology, its origin that a lot of people have now discovered. Its origin was not with Bruce Lee. It was with Mao Zedong through Dan Inosanto, which now ties us into, and I won't go too deeply into this, but when I'm listening to Mahi talk, I remember in this book where Richard Bustillo says that the Kali opened their eyes in the Jeet Kune Do, and the Jeet Kune Do opened their eyes in the Kali as well. All right, so that's my little contribution there, trying to be cool.
No, thank you. All right, last but not least, Guru Mark, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, this whole thing about Filipino-American martial arts is really intriguing to me. So after the bladed hand came out, I basically made a decision to call what I do Filipino-American martial arts. And I found that documentary quite refreshing, because it was quite balanced in the issues that we're talking about. And just in regards to like mispronunciation of terms, misspellings, and things of that nature, like Mahi said, it's quite natural. And there's also the human side of the story too, right? These people that taught the Filipino fathers that came to the U.S., in my case, weren't necessarily scholars, okay? And neither were the people studying from them. So right there, you're going to get the possibility of some mishearing, mispronunciation, heavy accents, and writing stuff down the wrong way. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
that's about it for me.
No, thank you. Thank you all.
If I can add to that, right? Like,
please do.
Like when you look at, so I have deep roots into Stockton, and I hear, even now you can hear a certain pronunciation when you hear them. And if you're listening to them for the first time, guess what? You're going to hear things wrong. And in the early days, especially when Angel was teaching, and Guru Ron and Guru Jaime have told me this many times, they'd say, oh, do this, do this, do this. So there's a certain accent. And Guru Jaime spoke Tagalog. So they had a very different relationship than somebody who only spoke English. And there was a very heavy pronunciation. And the first generation of Sarada was pretty intuitive. It was only the formalization with Guru Inai and Screamer that it started to be formalized. So there's something that's always also lost when you start formalizing things, because this notion of formalizing things is a very Western idea of putting structure on what is otherwise a
Systematizing.
very free-flowing, very intuitive response. Now think about this. Think about this also. Where did these guys, the first generation, where did they work? They worked in the fields. They worked in the fields. The language that they spoke was different. Doesn't make it bad. I'm just saying that this is where they worked. And for them, fighting was about life and death. They didn't care about if this was a number 2 or a number 1. You know, it was, hey, this is what kills. You have 2 weeks to learn this before you go to war, right? So there it was born out of necessity. So the movement was primary. I think most of us, I can speak for most of us here, it's an art of leisure. When was the last time you had a challenge match?
Yeah,
Right.
I know. True,
Yeah.
true.
Right? So now it becomes a completely different expression. Mark and I discuss and laugh about this, that in many ways, the word martial has lost its significance with a lot of practice. It's become LARPing and cosplay, right?
I
So
think
it's
that's fair.
only natural when we try to impose this paradigm and say, okay, this is how you should do it. It's just a way of controlling how you express yourself. And do I want somebody to control how I express myself? Well, you can try. Yeah.
No, well said from all of you. Yeah, this is getting very interesting. And now we're going to go to part 2.
Oh.
So part 2, now we're going to get more into specific lens as far as the actual terms. And this should pique some interest because the mother art term of Kali will not be discussed. So Sifu Dwight has agreed to tackle this one first. So terms, Kali, Eskrima, our niece. It is argued that Kali is a Western creation and that is not of origin in the Philippines as far as categorizing their indigenous arts. Sifu Dwight, what say you?
So when I came along, that's what was explained to us. If I remember correctly, we were even told that our niece had 3 areas of training. Eskrima had 7, but it was Kali that had all 12 areas of training. And then, so that's one of the first, that's something that you hear early on. And then you've discovered that that is disputed by different people. The thing that intrigues me is, as everybody knows, the derivation from the Spanish language for Arnis and Eskrima. And then I've never yet had an answer to this question. If Arnis and Eskrima are derived from the Spanish language, what was the name or a name for the art before the Spaniards got there? Now, my understanding is that the letters K-A-L-I are found in words like Kalirongan, Kaliradman, and Pagkali-Kali. I am not the linguistics student that Mahi probably is. And ultimately, to me, it doesn't matter. But I will tell you one thing that I have adopted and that I have used since day one is the construction of the term Kali, and whether this is accurate or not, it does serve a useful purpose. And so the thing about the Ka being found in the words kamai or kamot, meaning the hand, also found in katawan, meaning the body, and then the Li being found in the word lihok, which means motion. Therefore, for almost 40 years, I have taught that as a way of conveying to students that Kali is therefore the art of understanding hand and body motion with or without a weapon for combat or for recreation. Because like Mahi just said, most of us are recreational martial artists. We're not putting it on the line on a daily basis. But it doesn't mean that we should water down anything. It doesn't mean that we should be dismissive towards the history of the art or dismissive towards the culture. We have to understand roots. So we have to understand what it is that has been transmitted. We have to be thankful for the old timers who kept this art alive, that we are able to participate in it. And we have to cherish that. And we have to do things, we have to do whatever we can to honor that tradition. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, right. All right. All right. Next, we'll take a crack at it. Guru Mark, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, again, for me, I have to draw the resource to my lineage. And because Guru Lucky actually hosted Floro Villabrea in his home, family home. Well, it would have been Guru Lucky's father, actually, in Hawaii, or in Kauai, right? And Kauai. So, you know, their art is, and the son, Ted's, is directly linked to the Villabrea Largusa Kali. And I've been researching this a little bit further for quite some time. And actually, you know, that group didn't always call its art Kali. They also called it a Scream and Arnis. So for whatever reason, when Grandmaster Floro chose to name it Kali, I don't know why he did, you know.
Does anyone?
I'm saying again?
Does anyone know why he did?
Yeah, well, they're rather secretive, so they probably know.
Okay.
But again, the reason I use it is because that's what my guru called it, and I'm comfortable with it. I think also that if you get back to, was there ever a mother art in the Philippines? I doubt so, because it was tribal and regional and family oriented. And so, but when you talk about the Visayans, right, is basically they called it kalis, which is a type of sword. It was just a generic term for how to swing a blade, right? And swing and thrust a blade. And you have to remember at that time also is that actually the Visayans were fighting against what they called Moro pirates. And so there was definitely cross-pollination going on, you know, because when adversaries have war with each other, they adopt each other's stuff. It's the natural way of a warrior, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Borrow, steal.
Yeah. And that's about it from my perspective.
No, thank you.
Can I ask Mark a question about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So even if it's tribal and regional, isn't it still a mother art? I mean, obviously not a single mother art, but there was something going on before the Spaniards.
Yeah, and even Mahi pointed out the possibility of the Hindu influence and the conquest of the Philippines from that period of time as well. You know, but I'm sure it goes before that as well. You know. Yeah, but it's always changed. I think that's the point. Is that it has always changed as well. Yeah.
But you see, so again, you know, it appears that the more and more that we discuss things, the more the truth comes out that everything is interconnected, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
That wasn't rhetorical.
Dwight's getting in his chair.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I think no. I'm just kidding. We knew. Hey, all honesty, Sifu, it's hard to control. We knew this was gonna. We knew this was gonna come out. So no worries. Last but not least, Guru Mahipal, anything you would like to add?
Actually, a couple of things, if I'm allowed to. So number
Sure.
one, I hear a lot of BS that Kali comes from Mother Kali, Ma Kali from India, the so-called goddess of destruction. Please don't say that. It's really off. It's really wrong. It just shows your ignorance to both my culture and the Filipino culture. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, my own research, independent of Mark, also found that the term originated with Grandmaster Floro. Okay, and prior to that, there's no mention of it around. In quite a few conversations, I've also had people talk about, hey, but look at the word, it's Kali Illustrissimo. I say, no, it's Kali Illustrissimo. And in talking with Mangromi, he mentioned to me, and it's on tape as well quite a few times, that was Mangromi and Grandmaster Tony Diego, who came up with the term much later called Kali Illustrissimo based on Leo Gahe's recommendation. Right, and the reason for that was, and the meaning of it was the whole of Illustrissimo. That is, when you fight an Illustrissimo, you end up in a hole. So there's yet another meaning of the term Kali. Right. Third, mother art. Yes, there is a mother art, and the mother art is called human conflict. Right, because anytime people fight, the things that survive are the things that work.
Right.
But to say that, hey, this only worked in this culture on this particular island and everything else is wrong, I think it's arrogant and you haven't traveled enough.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. So just what I want to, I mean, I've never had a dog in a fight. Personally, I like the term Kali. However, I don't push the agenda. If the people in the Philippines like our niece or screamer, you know what? I don't have a dog in the fight. But far as the term, I do think there's a marketing thing in the US with it. And I say that because when I was involved with SEAC and Atienza in the late 90s, early 2000s, they wanted, and I just noticed from conversation with both, they wanted to bring that whole thing of edge weapons, and what better term to embrace the so-called mother art of Kali and all that. But again,
so I hear you, and I don't have a dog in the fight with JKD or with Kali Eskrima Arnis. I haven't taken papers from anybody, okay, and from nobody in all these years. So so what I'm saying is just my findings, right? So this is what I think. Now, again, remember what I said about language being the house of being. The way language is framed, and you're framing these arts, you're saying this belongs here, this belongs here, this belongs there. And in many ways, these are just branding exercises. Yes. Ultimately, these are all just branding exercises. Mm-hmm. And what does branding do? Two things only. One, it really protects. If you're truly secretive, it protects. But if it's truly protecting, then that term won't get out. And if it got out, it's really bad. It's a really bad secret. And second, it's a rice bowl strategy. It's a way of marketing for you to get your dollars.
I on the marketing, I've seen it. Like, explain to me, like A to Z. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, it's still going on. I mean, you have all of these modern martial arts and combative systems and all these things, and it's quite the norm now. There's even more systems now than there ever was.
Yeah. So I think as far as Kali goes, hey man, it's another house. It's a different trip. So be it. It still shares quite a few similarities with them. And to most people, if you saw a skilled arnisador and skilled escrimador or skilled calisador, a really skilled guy, not doing form, but actually sparring, I doubt they'll be able to tell the difference.
Right.
Agreed.
So, yeah. So then again, everything's connected to everything else.
Yes. And why create these fake diversions? And yet at the same time, even though everything is connected to everything, I think what should be celebrated is the very specific different adaptations that happen. So when you study haplology, you have something called, with Don Drager's work, you have something called IAT and MAT, it's innate adaptive traits and basically manifest traits. So your genetics are your innate traits, but manifest traits are those things that grow through training. Now, think about this. I still remember we were on this trip in the islands, in the backwaters of Negros Mountains in Bacolod. It was Mangromi, Mangron, Fabrizio Mansour, and a few others. I think it was Elric Yundis was there. My memory might be off, but I think he was there, and a few others were there. We're going to find this art of tapado. And I saw this weird thing happen. There was a second or third guy that I saw who's walking without a right arm. And I said, what the hell's with this village? Why are there so many people without a right arm? Just understand, there are no roads, it's dirt roads we're driving through. So, it's hard to miss something like this. And then Mangromi laughed and he said, he lost his arm in a battle. And that is an innate characteristic, meaning they still live by the blade there. When was the last time we walk around and see someone without a hand, right? And say, oh, he lost his arm to a blade. So my point is that very specific adaptation is very true to Philippines, and that should be honored. These guys are very fiery, very warlike. They still live and die by the blade in many portions of those islands. And I stood there just in awe, right?
Yeah.
And then we have martial artists here who are exemplars of technicality, right? Who have learned so much, who have gone around the world so much and learned and mastered so many different disciplines and found things that connected. Have they been in a war with the Kampilan? No. Could they? Possibly. But they also have some very rich insights that you can learn and draw from. And this has become a very different adaptation, right? So in many ways, these are totally two different animals. And that's why they bark or they talk or they brave, whatever animal's your favorite, very differently. So that is okay. That is okay. But I think they both come together, cross-pollinate, and actually make each other better. They make each other richer, and they provide a mirror that helps you understand that other perspective in an ever deeper way. So that's all I have to say about this,
No, it's fantastic.
And you said that was.
Can I go ahead, Dwight? You go first.
Yeah, you said that was in Negros, right? Where you saw. Okay, and that is Mindanao.
No, it's not Mindanao. It's Bacolod.
Okay,
The southern tip of Bacolod. Yeah, but pretty close to Mindanao.
All right, because what I wondered is, would that be common to see somebody missing a hand? Would that be common in the central region and in the northern region as well?
In the north, I didn't find that, but in the south, it gets crazy. Right. JJ and JJ Harvest, Guru JJ Harvest, and Mangromi, we were planning to go to Mindanao, and they said, "No, man, we'll all be kidnapped. We're not going there."
Right.
Yeah.
See,
and then, if I may add one small thing, Dwight, just 1 sec, so I don't lose that train of thought. I'm very lucky to have learned with Mushtaq Ali Al Ansari, probably one of the few people who's showing and teaching Amaro art. He's only taught 2 people so far. His first students died, so I'm the only other one that he's taught. And there are people who came from the Moro Islands to check him out, and they check him out, right? And when I'm moving with the Kampilan and things with him, there are no names for techniques. It's like, do like this. This is what I was shown.
Yes. Yes.
That is that. And it's a very fiery, very warlike art. It doesn't make it inferior just because we don't have names or we're pronouncing it wrong. And in many ways, what we've also done is that using Spanish destreza terms, because it kind of makes sense.
Right.
Say, hey, you want to do nails up, nails down, or you're doing a ribbon cut, because, hey, we have language for it. So language for what? For movement that otherwise would be like, do like this, just helps make it richer.
Yes.
So, sorry, Mark, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about some things that we were talking about the martial in martial art, right? And things like, you know, a lot of fighting actually is ambush, and the preparation for ambush, how people treat their blades in order to, you know, and also, I mean, a reference to like the work of someone like Jim Keating, you know, and how it's just basically the same thing. Think technical skills are super important, but there's a whole side of the martial that is totally a different world.
Yeah, Mark and I have discussed many times how they would treat blades. Like Mangron would talk about how specific poisons are prepared with various plants. And if you couldn't prepare these poisons, hey, you tell me, you know, keep your blade out there, go shit and piss on it for a few days. I'm like, what? So yeah, go shit and piss on it for a few days, let it get infected. So when you cut the guy, you're giving him sepsis.
Right.
If you don't sever his entire arm out, you're giving the guy sepsis. And that was worse than getting the arm chopped off back in the day. So, but that is true martial thinking, you know. It's a very different mindset than, okay, I'm going to do heaven 6 3 times and then knock him on his head. Sorry, right. I had to say that.
Yeah, the marketing thing, the thing about the marketing of the term Kali, was that I have a contention that without naming names, that some people started to refer to what they were teaching as Kali. Very popular people did that.
Yeah. Very popular.
And then some other people
domination.
Jumped on that bandwagon in order to gain from that usage and to be able to identify with that term, which was being used by some very, very popular people.
Same as Panantukan.
Oh, we gotta hold up on that. That's gonna be our next.
Or Dumo.
Wait, let me before we get into that. That's so are we done with section 2?
To be honest, I forgot what the sections were. It's all just flowing into because it's a natural art, right?
It's all connected, dude.
It's all connected. It's a natural
right,
art.
We're going to connect to
try as we might. We're not going to be able to systematize this conversation.
Anyhow, those of you watching, please tell us where you're watching from. We had Steve Brody watching. Julius, Brian Rodriguez, Tom Pena, Orlando, hey, long time no see, Maestro Chad Belly, Brooks Long, we got quite the audience. We got 20 people watching. All right, awesome. Guro Paul and some other folks. All right, okay, section 3, and Guro Baste. All right, section 3 is basically the terms. So terms that are not really accepted over in the Philippines, they simply just say they didn't exist. So Guro Mark is going to take this one on first. So the terms Panantukan, Dumag, and there's a third one. The pinching and biting. Thank you. Have been debunked by many over there. So Guro Mark, what say you on this?
Yeah, you know, the whole thing, and I've talked to a lot of people that were there during the time that Guro Lucky Lukai again, you know, was giving a name, a Filipino name, was asked to give a Filipino name to his empty hand fighting method. And it was primarily Western boxing inspired by the blade of Kali. And again, you know, people are aware of the story. He is Visayan, and he wanted to call it Suntukan, and because that was the logical one. But for reasons unknown, they decided to use Tagalog, right? And I have no idea why about that part. And so it was pronounced and written down Panantukan. And when I went to the Philippines quite a few times to teach JKD, because I don't teach Filipino martial arts in the Philippines, but I teach JKD there, my guys just told me, look, the term makes a lot of sense. It's just pronounced wrong. It's Panantukan. Panan, not Panan. In regard to Dumog, which is also what called Bunai or something, Bunal or something, Bunai, right? Is it?
Buno.
Buno, yeah, Buno. Is again, I don't think these are generic terms. They are kind of well, actually, in a sense, they are generic terms. So they're not really styles, but they're just ways to describe how one might use grappling in their specific system. There's not just one. There's not just one Dumog. There's not just one Buno, right? They're done differently and to varying degrees depending on the system that you're learning. And in regards to Kinumutai, I mean, when I go to the Philippines, they just laugh their ass off about that one.
That's what we have gotten on many episodes. When that term always comes up, it results in laughter.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, it's an important aspect of being martial, as Mahi was implying. You know, you do what it takes to survive. You know,
Yeah, pinching, biting.
and but again, they're searching for Filipino names. You know, and I guess it's the best they could come up with.
Just to add to what you were saying, like on the Dumog, I had somebody on, and he terms, he actually lives right outside of Manila, and he terms his wrestling or whatever grappling Dumog. And so when I asked him, I said, look, is it fair to say that that Dumog could be construed as an umbrella term for what you guys are doing now, because there's BJJ in there, there's Greco-Roman. I mean, there's, you know, obviously you see it when they're, you know, when he was doing this stuff. I mean, it was clear as day. And he agreed. He said he agreed that it's kind of serving more as an umbrella term. So I thought that was interesting. Next, Guru Mahipal, anything you'd like to add? Where should I begin?
No. I put it this way, right? I kind of understand FMA from a very Indian context and Indian martial arts. So I have a strong bias, right? So what I'm going to speak about is from that bias from Indian weapon systems. So what you were taught when you went to fight, and remember, these are clan arts and tribal arts, right? These are not martial arts. Now, you have to make that distinction between clan, tribal, and martial arts, right? Clan and tribes, it's usually within a family or within a group of families that learns, right? Martial is when it's been systemized and somebody came in and taught you very specific ways of moving, right? So these are clan and tribal arts. Now, when they went to fight, they went with weapons first. If they didn't have a blade, then they would use a stick. If they lost their weapon, if they lost their blade and their stick, then they would get into boxing, and ultimately they would end up grappling, right? So think about it and the grappling sometimes would end up in biting and pinching, right? I mean, Mike Tyson, if you don't think biting works, look at Mike Tyson, right? So I tend to think about this as much more ranges and what weapons I have access to, right? And it is unstructured. And when I say unstructured, I mean, you're talking about clan and tribal arts, not martial arts. You have to make that distinction. You don't make that distinction, everything starts to fall away, right? Yeah. And here what happens is whatever works. So what about these terms? These terms for me at least, just signifies a very particular range and whether I have access to weapons or I don't have access to weapons. For example, Dumog for me is when my hands and my legs have gotten trapped. At least one or two of them have been trapped. By trap, not Wing Chun JKD trapping, but meaning the other opponent has his hands or legs and control of it. Now, what do I do? How do I use leverage and how do I move? So I see those terms mainly as, hey, these are interesting terms. Again, you know, like we were on long road trips with Mangromi and Mangron in Philippines, and all we did was talk martial arts for days to end, you know, days and nights to end as we're traveling through. Something about this came up and we said, you know, we didn't use those terms, but one of the training methods that Tatan used to use and that he was trained with was they would apply oil on their body and then learn how to grapple. Right. And something similar even came up with what Angel would do. in Sarada, and we found a whole bunch of different training methods and what they would do, but that was not a primary way of fighting. So it was not an art that you went to learn, but it was an aspect, a range that if you were so unlucky,
Right.
and I'm using that term very specifically, that you were so unlucky or so that you lost control of your weapons, that you ended up in that situation, that you would do what you have to do to survive. So do I see it as an art by itself? I don't, but who the hell am I? It's just one man's opinion.
The way it was always sort of me, and we're going to get Guro Dwight, Sifu Dwight will be able to expand this more, that they were almost like subsets, you know what I mean? And all that, not entire arts themselves, but I could be wrong there. Sifu Dwight, what say you?
Well, that's where the 12 areas thing comes in, right?
So more subset like.
Yeah,
like,
because you have all the weapons areas, and then you have the empty hands, right? Pangamut, kamut, mano, whatever, right? And then within the empty hands are the subsets that you're talking about, right? So that's how we heard terms like Panandiakman or Sikaran for kicking, Panantukan for punching, Dumog, Layug, Tapon, Buno were all grappling methods. Then the infighting of Kinamutai, and then the Higot Hubad was trapping. Now, years later, I realized that what people were doing is they were taking JKD terminology stuff and finding Filipino terms to translate. But so this is the question I wanted.
That's very interesting.
This is a question I wanted to throw to the group, right? So, is it possible that a guy is learning from these old Filipinos and they don't have terms? So he's not learning terms. So he says, well, I need to find a way to remember what the heck it is that I'm learning.
Oh, of course, I think so.
Right? Okay. So if I'm the quarterback and Mark is the ball snapper, right? So he snaps the ball to me, and within 2 seconds, I pass it to the runner or whatever. What do we call that in football? That's called a quick release, right? There's a thing that we learn where you do the cambiada and you go like that, and it's called a quick release. Now, if you are running with the ball, Dean, and I'm on the opposing team, and you run past me and I get my hands on the ball and I get it away from you, what is that called in football?
You intercepted.
No, it's called a strip.
Oh, I thought you meant I came in and got it. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Strip,
so
strip.
when I take the ball out of your hands, it's called a strip. Have you heard that term in Kali for a disarm?
Stripping?
Okay, now I know what you're getting at.
Right? You see?
Yeah.
So is it possible that somebody just asked somebody else, well, what's the word for, so he sees an action and using his history, his own history, he says, well, that's like a strip in football. So then you ask the old Filipino, what's the word
For strip.
strip?
Okay.
Right? Now, let's say that that word is put into usage, right?
Yeah.
And now that usage is spread through seminar. That's how we end up with Filipino American martial arts.
Yes,
That
yes.
was- wow.
And then it ends up back in the Philippines.
Right.
And then they refuse.
Because if you have more Filipino Americans traveling to different countries of the world, promoting Filipino martial arts. Then you have Filipinos traveling the world, promoting Filipino martial arts. You're going to have branches from that one tree. Right?
Hey, hence the title.
Yep.
You see? So, I mean, it's like, sepak jambatan. My understanding is you go, okay, what's the Indonesian word for slap? What's the Indonesian word for bridge? And then in your terminology list, you now get these things, So what's the word for block? What's the word for inside? What's the word for outside? And so it came after a fact because like Mahi said way in the beginning, people are trying to systematize a natural art, a tribal art, which is passed on in certain ways and not necessarily systematically. But I wanted to ask the question, is there a value to systematize it, or will it kill the art? Will the art continue if it's just clan, family, tribe, and there is no martial development?
I have an opinion. I'll state my opinion on this. I think you kill it, and the reason for it is, see, when we give it terms, the terms become the prison. So I'm not a JKD guy, but I'm going to step into JKD crap. Okay.
Feel free, buddy.
Mark's loving this. So Jeet, how do most people interpret Jeet? Intercepting. But if you look at the old term, it means to cut through. Now when you look at, so this was something that in my conversations with Pat Strong, this came up and I verified it and he was right, So if you look at it now, if you look at Jeet Kune Do, when you think about intercepting fist, you're half a beat behind. But when you think about cutting through the fist, you're half a step ahead, half a beat ahead. So what happens is when we are creating this language, right? The language becomes the prison. So it serves as branding, but it also can become a prison.
You know what I'm not going to say?
that.
You know what I'm not going to say? I'm not going to say that when we practice Sombrada, when we practice the counter for counter, I'm not going to say that we actually say that that is a method of getting one step ahead of your opponent. I'm not going to say that because these things are not connected at all.
Dwight, I do want to ask you something though, because you brought up.
But you see what I'm saying, though, right?
I see exactly what you're saying, right?
So my thing is, so what happens? So for example, right? There's this very interesting notion of uncovering, right? Uncovering and unfolding, and I'm using these terms very specifically. Certain arts get lost, certain methods get lost. And then if they are lost, it's usually lost because there's a loss of language and a loss of having captured it in some form.
Yep.
Hence a plug for Immersion Labs to come and archive with us. But differently, it gets lost. And now when you're trying to uncover this, you start to discover patterns that emerge. You spend time with a weapon or a method, it'll start speaking to you if you're diligent with it. Now, when it starts speaking to you, we, especially as Western trained martial artists, we then try to find names for it. And we start giving it names. And what those names, we try to give them names so that we can categorize them. But the very creating of the categories creates the boundaries and the prisons.
Interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, part of the other thing I've been doing, I guess for the past 10 years, is actually coming up with my own terminologies because I understand what I'm talking about. I mean, I understand it to myself. I have to articulate in such a way to where I know exactly what I'm talking about.
But
That's interesting. Coming up with your own.
That's called proprietary language, right? And that is actually what you're supposed to do. Before Bruce Lee, right? Did anybody talk about ranges of combat? Did anybody talk about progressive indirect attack, attack by combination, attack by drawing? Nobody did any of that. That's all JKD proprietary language.
I don't
As
know
far
about
as,
that, man.
well, as far as I know,
You find a lot of it in fencing, and you find not those terms used directly, but you
right,
find those ideas and concepts in most of the old arts,
right, okay,
but
so,
not the term maybe.
yeah, see, so Mark, you're just doing what Bruce Lee did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're supposed to do that
Yes.
without a
Because if you
doubt.
don't
It kind of brings us
if you don't understand yourself, then you can't really articulate.
Right,
correct.
right.
Yeah, let alone the students.
Yeah, so again, what we're actually being taught by people like Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto and others is to think for ourselves. That's what we're really being taught. We're not being taught to mimic them, try to be them, because they were just being themselves. So we're being taught to think for ourselves and be ourselves as well.
Yeah, but Sifu Dwight, do you think that in today's, what you're seeing though, that's not a commonality though?
What do you mean?
Meaning that most don't take it upon themselves to think for themselves. It's become
Because
like
that is hard work. Everybody wants it done for them.
Right.
Nobody wants to
Some
pay
of
the
them where
daily
they
price.
want to emulate who they got it from, as opposed to leading their own way or creating their own path or their own style, their own mode of thinking and all that. I see robots.
Do you think more money is made in the do-it-yourself industry or in the done-for-you industry?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you. Yeah, yeah. I just think it's a shame that what they really didn't get from the gentleman you just mentioned was to think on your own, because I've seen the complete opposite for the most part today, you know?
I blame this.
What's that?
I blame technology.
Oh yeah, making
It made it easy for them to get everything at their fingertips. So they no longer use this. They don't retain much of anything because they can always look it up.
No, I'm agreed. No, it's become too easy. Yeah, right. Why? I mean, why think for it on your own when you can just go to YouTube or whatever?
Right. So they never immerse themselves in anything. To put a plug in for immersion labs, right? They never immerse themselves. What's another term for immerse? Go deep.
Yeah.
You see, they don't know about that. They don't.
No, again, you know, I just see basically, you know, adding things or just assembly line kind of thing, or just, but right, I don't see.
What? So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why Mahi does not look favorably on the systemization. You know, because then it just becomes cookie cutter imitation stuff. So now it's not real anymore.
But you have to still have it, because otherwise there's nothing to liberate from. I mean, it's still it's the dynamic interplay between system and not.
Mark, based on our conversations, you want to talk about the 3 points, the theses, and
gosh, I forgot now what the hell I was talking about.
You and I were talking about, you know, between the system and non-system and the synthesis to emerge, the theses, the antitheses, and the synthesis.
Please elaborate on that.
Please,
because I mean that's
yours.
that's my favorite theme. You know, I use the three comma Mitsutomo from the Okinawan and symbol, right? And I immediately recognize that as basically the same thing, another version of yin yang, or another understanding that you start with binary thought, things at opposite ends, but that when they move together and interrelate at varying degrees, it actually is like three moving spheres, and even a marbled effect that goes from gray to black and white and changes. And so now I'm going off on a tangent, so you'd be better.
I see. Okinawan stuff now being connected to Chinese stuff. God damn. It's so sad. It's so sad. I mean, because isn't it obvious? Isn't it obvious that everything points to interconnectedness and freedom? I mean, What do I know?
And by forcing language, you're creating a prison, conforming my movement to your understanding, right? So in many ways, can I be a little controversial here? In many ways.
This whole show is controversial. Go ahead.
So in many ways, why not accept the existence of something called Filipino American martial arts? Because it is its own animal. So in some ways, this is like a grafted tree, right? So the mother plant, yes, it's definitely Filipino, but you've grafted other pieces. You know, there are pieces of silat that has come in. My own training, say maybe karate do has come in. This and that has come in. I can't remove that and say that, hey, it's in its pure expression. The only way you're going to have the purest expression of that is if you were from the tribe or the clan and you've had no prior training or no training henceforth. So in many ways, this rather beautiful expression has come because very much like grafting, but this one tree has been grafted with many different branches. So instead of just giving one kind of apple, it's giving you 5 different varieties of apple. It doesn't make any one apple less tasty or less beautiful, but in its own way, it has its own beauty. So now trying to say that this apple shall conform to the mother plant, the stump.
No, well said, well said. Which now leads, we can get into section 4, which Guro Mahipal, you would like to lead this, and evolution from the Philippines to America, classical to non-classical. People make changes when people move. What would you like to say on this?
I think I've already started, right? So in so many ways, right? The changes happen. So look at it this way, right? I was talking, I was sitting down and having this long conversation with Grandmaster Estalia in Fresno. And his father opened the first Filipino school in 1945 in Alaska, okay? And he said, you know, his father was trained to fight with the barong, but now they couldn't fight with the barong because they couldn't cut off a white guy's hand with the barong. So what did they do? They started replacing the barong with sticks. So did the art adapt because of socio-political reasons? Did it adapt because it came to a different place? Yes. Same thing you hear over and over again in Stockton, right? Now here's a weird thing, right? Here's a weird thing. All of us have done Filipino arts for a few years. Yeah, we've all done Filipino arts for a few years. We all still primarily practice with the stick, true? But we say this is a bladed art. Why is that? Did it not adapt? Did it not adapt because you're in a different place and it's not so cool to be moving around with blades? Especially based on the first generation who had to be careful. Many of them, they were supporting their entire families. But we are told, hey, keep a blade awareness. But heck, I'm moving with a stick all the time. What the fuck do I know about edge awareness if all I've held is a stick and the weight distribution of the blade is different? So there itself, it adapted. And now many of us Americans have this thing where we're moving with sticks, but we think we know how to fight with blades. No, you don't. Right? So this evolution is natural, that based on what the consequences of your action are. Hey, you fight, and studying with this gentleman who teaches tapado, right, here in the US. To him, everything is it's a life and death matter. He's an amazing guy, amazingly skilled. I wouldn't want to, the only way I want to fight him is with a damn shotgun, you know? It's Master Emilio, that's the only way I want to fight him. But to him, everything is a life and death. There's no, he's an amazing guy, you know, very skilled. It's life and death. We don't operate like that. So that evolution is natural based on where you end up because of socio-political reasons. Look at capoeira. How did that come about? Right? Look at some of the so-called slave arts, like, you know, including Indian, my kind of Indian arts, right? Some of the slave arts. How did they come about? Because your weapons were taken away from you. Why the emphasis on kicking? Two reasons. Your hands are in chains, number one. And number two, you're not good enough for me to touch you. I'm going to kick you. You know?
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
so you have to think about, based on the conditions that are put on the person and where they end up, this is where the manifest adaptive traits come in. What emerges based on the pressures that are put on the system. So evolution is natural. Us as Americans are extremely lucky and extremely privileged for many reasons. You know, everyone from the world wants to come here. Everyone wants to market their shit here. Everyone wants to give their things here. So with that, we have this buffet of things that we can pick and choose from, right? It's not something that happens everywhere. And because of this unique ability to take these different things, we've evolved in a very specific and very different way. And it has, I would say, Filipino American martial art is a real thing. It's a different animal than FMA. And it'll continue, it has been adapting and developing, and will continue to do so. And to be even more forceful, I would say that particular way of thinking, because of American cultural hegemony, we're pushing that to the rest of the world. One would even say that in order for you to succeed here in the US, you would have to adapt that thinking, which means that many of the teachers wanting to come here have already adopted that thinking. That's all I have to say.
No, that's a good point on how some of them adapted, because I know a few that did things they normally didn't do as far as teaching structure when they were back over there. So that's a good point. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. So those who have systematized in the Philippines what they teach, are they teaching FAMA in the Philippines, or are they teaching FMA with an FAMA imprint?
I think both. I think sometimes both. Depending on what they were exposed to from either going to America or what was maybe brought to them from people that came from there. You know.
By the way, this is
that's a very interesting dynamic.
You know,
if I may add,
actually,
this is not to say that FMA doesn't have terms. That's not what I'm saying at all. Not at all, right? I think anything that has survived will have some terms, whatnot. But I'm talking about a very particular mindset. And to say that, hey, trying to say that, hey, conform to this or conform to that, it's a losing battle. What I'm saying is, we may have come from the same stream, but it's become two different rivers by themselves. And they have very interesting characteristics to themselves, right? And it's time to say, okay, you know what? Two rivers, so what? Or two branches, so what, right? If we keep getting stuck to, oh, this is not the right term, or this is not the right movement, do you really want to go back to India and have Sanskrit terms for everything? I'm for it. Bow down, all of you. You know, it'll be, that is stupid, man. You can quote me on that.
No, yeah. Sifu Dwight, you're next. If there's anything else you wanted to contribute to this.
I'll just reiterate that, especially based on everything that we've talked about here, it just seems to me that having an open mind towards it all, being able to accept the commonalities, the similarities, and then even more importantly, accept the differences, leads to a greater understanding of the commonalities. And then that dissipates the argument, I think. I think if you're strong enough, it's like Sifu Nasano says at the end of the BBC documentary, if you're secure in your knowledge, you don't have to hide it. Why hide it? You can just bring it out, right? So I think and actually it is in the segment on the Filipino martial arts in that documentary where he was talking about that. He was talking about how I think he said that the Chinese hid a lot. and he was just talking about, you know, the sophistication of Filipino martial arts and how not, I mean, this is a 1982 documentary, of course, right? And he was just saying that, you know, not as many people are familiar with the Filipino arts at that time when he was talking about it. But I just think it all boils down to openness, a willingness to accept even if you end up not agreeing with it, just be willing to accept that they have a right to their point of view. They have a right to doing things the way that they do it. But my belief is that when people do that, I think they see more and more that there's more commonality and more similarity than there is differences.
No, at 100%. Sure. Guru Mark, anything you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I was, you know, another favorite topic of mine is this idea that there's different genres within the greater the term martial arts, and I think that Filipino American or American mindset that Mahi is referring to has given us that understanding that there's different ways to practice, teach, and promote things. You know, you have the very combative thing, life or death thing. You have sport version. You have fitness or life skill. You have preserving tradition, right? Now, I think there's a lot of Americans actually that do all of them. And then, of course, you have the genre wars to where they talk shit about the other genre because it's the only way that they can promote their own genre. But they don't understand that they sound terrible.
Never happens. That never happens in FMA.
But yeah, that's about it for me. That's what I would like to conclude with.
Yeah. No, that was good. Anybody else that want to add any more to this as far as section 4?
Yeah, if I may just tie a few things, at least just from my own understanding, right? Evolution is natural. People are different races, different geographies, different environments will get you to move differently. What you hear, what you speak will be different based on the languages you hear. Okay, so it's only natural that as movement and arts travel, they change. Trying to conform them is a control drama. Many a times, just like, you know, when a child reaches a certain age, you let the child go.
Mm-hmm.
FAMA has grown up. Let it go. Let it use its terms. Let it use its own language. If it wants to speak in English, so be it. And if I decide or Mark decides to make our own language and our own shit up, so be it. That is the American credo. Okay? And I will not apologize for it. It is a different animal. I embrace it.
All right. I know, and folks that are watching, if you have questions, again, please let me know, because the questions will generate a part 2 of this. But I do want to throw a section 5 in here that didn't tell you guys about.
I knew he was up to something.
Oh yeah, but you know what though? I think this could be fun. I believe the Dog Brothers are a version of American Filipino martial arts. What say all of you?
Oh boy.
Let's have it.
The Dog Brothers are a version of Filipino American martial arts?
Our American Filipino martial arts. In other words,
American Filipino martial arts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Or an example thereof, if you want to put it that way.
Oh boy. Sure gonna land in trouble with Mark for answering this question. Go ahead.
Well, you know what? It's gonna be opinion based. I mean, you can all yay or nay.
I think they are a fabulous example of cultural appreciation. I don't know that the development of Dog Brothers martial arts or what have you is necessarily very far removed from something that may have happened in the Philippines.
No, I'm not suggesting it is. I'm just suggesting the stuff they put into it, created here and all that. I'm not saying it is. I wanted to get your guys' view on it.
Well, you know, I think we talked about this in the pre-call, that Americans will turn just about anything into a sport, right? You know, maybe that's an aspect of it, but an American Filipino martial art.
Could it be construed as that? Is my question. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I'm not saying it is.
That's interesting. But didn't the Filipinos have stick fighting competition? Or I don't know. I'm asking.
Depending on you talk to or what region, the ironwood sticks or the hardwood sticks. I mean, obviously there wasn't gear in depending on when that first hand was broken or the first head was split. I mean, you know what I mean? You know,
Right.
But but again, you know, just what you guys think. I mean, regardless, I guess, of, you know, did they do the same thing over there, or because it was created here, thus that falls under the lens of American Filipino martial arts. So I can go.
I think so. I think that's correct.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think that's correct. It's an expression. It's an American expression of combative sports, but it's combative sports. It's not martial art.
No. I mean, you're right. Whether you want to coin it, put it under the lens of, you know, sport, half art, whatever. But just, you know, I'm just interested in what you guys feel. You know.
Yeah, I think it's like it's the first MMA with a stick in your hand, something of that nature.
You know. How about you, Guro Mahipal? What say you on Dog Brothers? Could it be construed as an American Filipino martial art? Without you getting in trouble with Mark Denny.
No, it's all right. I know Guru Mark decently well, and we've talked about this. So I'll say this, right? Again, language is the house of being. What do they talk about? Higher consciousness through higher contact. Yeah. Okay. This is a very Western. It's a very Western framing.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of his credo is very Americano. Right. A lot of the psychology that he talks about comes from Carl Jung, and also comes from blanking out on the name right now, on his studies on evolution and aggression. The name's blanking out. I've talked to him a million times about it. Okay. But that is a very, very cohesive and confluence of things that have come together to give form to this very specific expression. So did stick fighting exist? Yes. But did this training methodology exist? Perhaps not. So this particular training methodology is an American gift to the world, right?
An American adaptation, yeah.
Yep. And the way you train is the way you react. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, all right, let's take a vote. And again, just, you know, want to see how you guys would view this. And I hope I didn't throw a curveball or anybody's upset by this. All right, Guro Mahipal, yay or nay, American Filipino martial art?
Hell yes.
Guro Dwight, Sifu Dwight.
An American adaptation, yes.
Guro Mark.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Hopefully Mark Denny won't get offended, and hopefully he'll enjoy the coining. We'll leave Guro Mahipal to break the news to him. And Guro Mahipal.
Ringing yet, so that's a good thing.
I did not host this show. It was a figment of your imagination. But so folks, if you have questions, because this is going to kind of wrap up. I mean, again, we wanted to present 4 sections here with the number 5 bonus. But if you have questions, that will lead to a part 2, or we might just do a part 2 anyhow. So if you do, though, please PM me, private message them, or you can leave them in the comment section below this in FMA discussion, and I'll take them from there. But hopefully some of you will send some, and we're more than happy to come back on and address those questions. Or again, we might just come back on anyhow and stir up some more good stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you folks for coming on. I truly appreciate it. I thought this went really well. And I appreciate you guys taking your time. The Zoom worked out well. And based on Guru Mark's suggestion. So any final thoughts? Guru Mahipal, any final thoughts?
I'm good.
Sifu Dwight, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just that, it's because of a conversation I had earlier today. I said that if you're extremely politically correct, then us martial artists, we are the biggest criminals when it comes to cultural appropriation. And it's so stupid. It's obvious that it's cultural appreciation instead.
All right. Guru Mark, any final thoughts?
No PC, baby. You know me. No PC.
And on that final note,
On that note, right?
we will be wishing you all a good night. And again, thank you for those who watched, commented, and hopefully we'll see some questions from you guys and all that. But I want to thank you again, all the guests here, for coming on. It was enjoyable, fun, and I hope we can do this again.
For sure.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Good night, all. Take care. Thank you.
Good night.